then he would dunk me under the water, you know, like they do in the movies. Like, put me under and then bring me up just long enough to catch a breath and then put me back under. And that kind of fucked me up, you know. One time he broke my glasses because he thought that I was staring at these two guys on the corner. We were down by Marshall, and I was actually living vicariously through this girl who was jogging. She had her headphones in, she had her, you know, sports bra on and her jogging pants, and, you know, she was just free. I never even got 3 minutes alone. You know, like, he would have never let me jog by myself, especially wearing something like that. And he would have never even let me go jogging. He would have, you know, called me stupid for even wanting to go. I would have had some ulterior motive, you know, according to him. I couldn't wear shorts. I couldn't wear tank tops. I couldn't wear leggings or anything that showed off my body at all. Even in, like, the dead middle of summer. I had to wear baggy jeans and big t-shirts. And he decided when I could and could not wear makeup. Like, I actually had to ask permission. Okay? The time he tried putting my head through the garage door window was because I put makeup on without asking while he watched, and then I refused to take it off. So he let me get my whole face on, and then he told me to wash it off. Then he broke every piece of makeup in my bag by stomping on it to teach me a lesson about asking permission. I didn't get to wear makeup for like a year because he refused to let me buy anymore. So anything I did have was given to me. When I was 18 years old, he forced me to have an abortion. That was the worst and best thing I've ever done. Not only did he force me to have an abortion, he forced me to beg my parents for the money to do it. And he threatened to beat it out of me if I didn't. And the list goes on and on. That was 3 years of my life. And I quickly learned that compliance equaled safety. Keeping the peace was way more important than speaking the truth. And, you know, you'll do unspeakable things when survival is your only goal, right? And, you know, I told no one. I couldn't tell anyone about this, because then I would have to explain why I couldn't leave. And, you know, I was ashamed, and I couldn't trust anyone with my secrets. If he ever found out that I told anyone about the things that he did to me, he would have literally beat me to death. And, you know, when I finally saw my opportunity to leave, I jumped on it, and I never looked back. He had decided to beat me up in public, which was something he never really did before, and someone called the police. That's not always a good thing to do. It's not always the best thing to get involved in a domestic dispute like that. But if the woman is ready to leave right then and there, like, she says fuck everything else, she can, you know, replace all of her stuff, she doesn't care about any of it, she just needs to get out. Someone intervening and calling the police can be your, you know, saving grace. It was mine. And I ended up moving back in with my mom and started my life over from scratch. Well, that way of life had rooted itself, into my identity. Because when you learn early on that love comes with pain, then you stop asking for better, right? You start tolerating more. You start believing that your role is to endure. And that's exactly what I did. I endured. I suffered. I became the fixer, the helper, the peacemaker, the people pleaser, the one who's holding everything together. And on the outside, it probably looked like strength. But on the inside, it was just sheer survival. Then came my first marriage. And, I truly believed that this was going to be different, But instead, I found myself in a different version of the same pattern. He was handsome. He was charming. He was an addict, a liar, a thief, a con artist. And, I didn't know. Not at first. He was a horrible husband and father. He never changed a diaper or gave a bath or a bottle. He treated my son, like an outcast because he wasn't his. And he was always, like, putting him in his room, and making him stay in there. Like, Jake was never allowed to come out and be part of the family. And he was very good at hiding his drug use. And, I was too occupied with raising 3 kids under 5 and working and going to school that, I didn't notice. And when I finally saw the truth, it didn't really come gently. It came all at once. Like your entire life getting just ripped out from under you. The lies, the deception, the reality that I had been living in wasn't real. And when it ended, I wasn't just devastated because, my husband was a junkie and my marriage was over. I wasn't just devastated about my 18-month-old almost dying literally days before from an infection. I was devastated because he left damage, like real damage. There were, 3 months of unpaid bills. When he left, I had to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do, and I just remember sitting there and crying and thinking, oh my God, how am I supposed to fix this? How am I supposed to fix this too? Because that's what I did. I fixed everything, even when I didn't break them, I fixed them. So I signed over our only vehicle to him to ensure that he at least had a place to sleep, because I'm not heartless. And I kicked him out. I was devastated, and I ended up having to take my 3 kids back to my mom, move back in with my mom, and start my life over from scratch again. And, every time I survived something like that, it reinforced the same belief, that I can handle it. But what I didn't realize was I wasn't just handling it, I was absorbing it. I was taking on other people's responsibilities, other people's chaos, other people's consequences, and I was calling it love, And then came my second marriage, okay? 16 years together. We were married for 12. Now, this one didn't explode all at once, okay? It eroded me and my kids. Slowly, quietly, and over time. So, he was an alcoholic. And he drank himself stupid every single night. To the point where I had to watch him. You know, I had to monitor him. I had to babysit him. I wasn't a wife. I was a caretaker. You know, every night I had to go behind him and make sure, you know, that the stove was turned off, that the doors were locked, that, you know, everything was safe. You know, because I couldn't trust him to function. If he got too drunk, he'd sleepwalk. One night he got so drunk he tried to scoot a door out of the way. Rather, you know, the door opens and closes. Well, he was trying to scoot it. He's peed in laundry baskets, or in the bed if it didn't wake him up. Or I've even followed him outside to pee before. I would just have to like follow him around and try to guess what he needed and then guide him there. There was no waking him up. You know, like if our house burned down, I would have died trying to get him out. You know, if someone broke in, they could have taken me kicking and screaming straight from our bed, and he would have never known. Like, that's how drunk he would get. That's how deep his sleep was. And not only that, he had turned my kids into little slaves. You know, he wanted them to have responsibility, which I was perfectly okay with. Perfectly okay with. Give them a couple little things to do. Well, before I knew it, you know, he spent more time at home than I did because I was going to school. Actually, I was working 2 jobs, and going to school. And so he was there with my kids. And, you know, before I even knew it, he had them doing, like, literally every chore. Every chore. There was nothing, you know, there was nothing left for us to do. You know, he was with them more than I was because, again, I was the breadwinner. And he had those kids doing everything from, you know, doing the dishes to sweeping the floors, cleaning the toilets, scooping the dog poop in the yard, you know, rinsing out cans to recycle. And believe me, there were plenty of them between the pop that we drank and the beer that he drank. There was lots of cans all the time. My kids did it all. And if they didn't do it to his liking, then they were punished. You know, and what made it worse was his kids never had to clean when they came over. His daughter would post her ass up on the couch and leave dishes and food and shit everywhere. And then she would leave. And then come Monday morning, my kids have to do their chores, which include cleaning the living room. And so now they have to clean up the mess that she left. Okay?